Welcome everyone to Planning and Goals. I have no camera, but I'm here. Perfect. As long as you contribute and you're smiling, even if we can't see you, I'm sure you're smiling. So this is, again, we took the 10 items and broke it into 3 categories so that we can do these breakout rooms. And this one is going to be planning and goals. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hope this works. And go back to where we were. I don't, no, sorry, wrong one. This one. Okay, are we seeing the Vibrant Club document?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the 3 that we're going to be looking at are these 2 on the top. And even though I said in the opening that the order of the 10 doesn't matter, to me, the order of the 10 does matter. And the 2 most important are at the top, but that's just me because I'm a planning and goals guy. And then we're also going to get into the coaching new and continuing members and leaders. So those are 3 we're going to cover. And again, the other 7, which are in those other sessions, there's integration and linkages, right? They're connected. So as we go through this, you may find some integration points between them, which would be worth discussing. Okay. So let's start with, again, in no particular order, let's just start with the strategic planning one. And this one has 2 documents that it links to, and I already have them brought up so we can go through them. The first is the Rotary Club Health Check, and I'm curious how many of you either are familiar with or maybe have even used the Rotary Club Health Check. Anyone? Bianca, you raised your hand. What is your experience with it? And then we'll take a look at it.
Well, I didn't probably do it in the way that you intended, but we had a really struggling club before I became president, and I used it just for myself before I took office as president, and just kind of looked at it and reviewed it, and then it gave me an idea of where, as president, I could work on things to make the club better, because I didn't think it was a good club. So in my opinion, if you don't like something, do something to make it better. So that's the way I used it. And like I said, that's probably not what you intended to hear, but
No, that's
it worked, and it helped
yeah.
us. It gave me some direction in how to improve the club.
So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Bianca. And we'll go through this, and you can kind of see as we go through this kind of what Bianca was thinking to use this as kind of a way to frame her thinking for how the club is going to improve. Anyone else use this before?
Is it kind of like a SWOT analysis?
Well, it's it's a the other document, the one we'll open after this one, kind of has a SWOT analysis in it. This one has it, but it's really more indirect. If you take a look at it, it's a checklist of all sorts of things to consider. So there's like self-reflection, there's how the club is doing. I mean, when it says health check, I mean, I work in healthcare, and I think about like when I get my physical, they kind of look at everything, you know, and how's everything working and how are you feeling and all that. So, but it's got a lot. And I like how Bianca framed using this maybe more internally as a way to kind of frame thinking. But for example, here's a whole slew of questions about your club experience. And again, it's a checklist. And here's again, just like a physical. What's the prognosis given how the responses went, and what are the maybe the interventions or things that can be done? But then there's more categories. Here's another set on service and socials. So another aspect of a healthy club. And again, there's no, these are not goals. They're yes, nos, right? So it's, again, it's a snapshot health check with prognosis based on the responses. So, and let's go through the rest as well. Another section on members. You get the gist, right? Snapshot, how healthy is the club? And there's one on image. And business and operations, and I think business and so there's a lot of similarities between the whole notion of being a vibrant club and this checklist in terms of how it's kind of set up. And then, you know, after you do the prognosis, what's next? So that's kind of how the document is laid out. The one thing we have not recommended, which fits in with what Bianca was saying, is that if a club wants to do a member survey, this may be helpful, but there's also a lot to read and a lot of checkboxes. So it's kind of big. So there may be different ways to use it than as your club member survey. So I wouldn't say don't use it. What I have seen clubs do is maybe use sections of this as a survey. The ones that maybe the incoming leadership feels are really important, but maybe not as a complete survey, if that makes sense.
Jeff, this is
Yeah.
Bill. It's sometimes I think it's useful to use it sort of in pieces. That last section is probably useful for the board, but maybe not for all the members of the club. But some of the earlier sections about service and social, those might be more applicable, more things that you need input from the whole club. The section about business and operations, that's probably something the board should be concerned about, but not as much the individual club members, particularly new members.
Good point. And it's interesting, like this first checkbox, our club has a strategic plan that we update regularly. Well, we talked in the larger session that all the members should be aware of the plan if there is one. So if that were the case, then the members should be able to know if this is true or not. But in many cases, the membership does not know. So I agree. Any thoughts or questions, Yasser? Is there anything you wanted to add regarding the health check?
No, I really like this, and I like the idea of breaking it down into sections and using polls and sending it out to your membership. An easy way to send out and collect data, but this is certainly a good guide.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me a little bit in a much bigger context. So, are you all familiar with, yeah? So there's what's called the presidential citation, or now I think it's called the Rotary citation, which is a series of things that a club can or should do, and their check boxes. And the notion is that if enough check boxes have been checked, that the club is eligible to get a citation at the end of the Rotary year. It's kind of like a recognition. It's similar to this in that it covers every aspect of Rotary, but the intent is to kind of get a flavor of how the club is doing. And clearly, the more boxes that are checked by more people, in all likelihood, the more healthy the club is. And then, as Bill pointed out, you know, just like with everything else, there should be a what's next. Just like if the club has a plan, but it doesn't execute the plan, then what was the point of developing it in the first place? So very helpful. And just like as Bianca said, if your club decides to use any of these tools, it's not like you have to use them exactly as they're shown to you. You can take them to pieces, or you can split them into different parts that you want to use for different purposes. So, okay. Any other questions or thoughts about that?
Well, as our current club president wants to focus on membership, so maybe he just needs to take that one section
Yeah,
and worry about it and not worry about the rest of it.
could very well be. And by the way, I apologize for scrolling, and it's going to be like that for this
That's all
just
right.
because there's so many. But yeah, I mean, it could just be that he focuses on these and
That's
gets
yeah.
us. Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. So
I'm sure there's a way to some of these responses assign a numerical answer where you could do a baseline where we're at right now and then be able to compare it 6 months or a year from now.
yeah, could be.
It would be great to have that document in a Word format
Yes,
so we can easily cut and paste the ones we want to use on a survey rather than retyping them all.
agreed. Okay, so again, if you're in the Vibrant Club document, it's this first hyperlink right here, Rotary Club Health Check. Then we have the strategic planning guide to set long-term goals. And this gets more into the SWOT analysis. Although if you think about it, and if you're not familiar with the acronym, SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That checklist is like a piece of what you would have in a SWOT analysis. It's like the strengths and the weaknesses. The strategic planning guide is this document here. And again, we'll kind of go through it. The district also has strategic planning guidance and materials. So if you go to 5520.org, there's some additional materials that we developed internally to use. It kind of describes the strategic planning process that we should follow. And right here, determining your status, how's our club doing now? That is kind of like Be a Vibrant Club, the whole notion of how we're doing. So this is where you can include something like a SWOT analysis, if that's what we're doing. Developing a vision, you know, what do we want our club to look like in 3 to 5 years, maybe even longer? You know, District Governor nominee Tom talked about sustainability, and it's really hard to wrap your arms around sustainability if there's not long-term thinking. If everything is in 1-year increments, it's really hard to think about sustainability just because that's a long-term view. Make the plan and then track the progress. And this is where we get into the goals right here. How close are we to goals? So when we're talking about sharing the plan with the membership, it's also good to share progress with the membership. Here's how we're doing. Here's where we're doing well. Here's where we may need to improve, things like that. And then for each section, it kind of goes through like a little worksheet that can be used, and it is fillable PDF, and you can probably transform it into a Word document. So again, this is a very nice guide. It's not one that a club has to use. There's other guides and templates and things, but I just like that Rotary has put this together as a template or framework for us to consider. And when Governor Richard mentioned earlier that in August of this Rotary year, something like 30% of the clubs had goals in Rotary Club Central, that's for this year, which means if they don't exist, then the club is 1 month and a little bit over 1 month into the year with no goals. And, you know, what we're trying to promote is it's really hard to be successful and vibrant without them. So any thoughts on this template or a template like it? Have any of you used a strategic planning guide? Or maybe a similar one? Oh, I didn't see that chat. So Chris said I have the health check in Word doc if anyone wants it. Did you just use Adobe to make it a Word document, or how did you do that?
I just converted it from Adobe. It's super simple, but if anybody can't do it, I got it. So
And
Well,
so it worked well then, converting it into Word.
yes,
Cool.
if you're able to, are you able to forward it in the chat here?
Yeah, you should be able to, because there's like a file option in the chat, I think, where you can attach a document.
Jeff, if you could guide us a little bit, what I've seen with strategic plans, and this happens everywhere, is we develop these documents and we put a lot of effort into them and they get filed somewhere and we all say we have a strategic plan. But the biggest challenges I've seen is in the execution of it, keeping it alive, having execution. So do you have any recommendations on how to execute these plans?
I do. I'm wondering if anyone else who's on the call, especially if you've already been in club leadership, have thoughts on this. It is by far the most frustrating problem that I've seen in Rotary clubs in general, is executing a plan once it's been developed. You know, no offense, but developing a plan is not that hard. Get a few people together and knock it out. But executing it is really hard. And I've wondered for a long time why that is. I think part of it is just understanding how a plan gets executed. So for me, to answer your question, Yasser, when I was president, as much as possible, I tried to equate aspects of the plan to club committees. And if you remember, one of the items in the Be a Vibrant Club document was this one down here about creating practical committees. So I started with the notion that if we set, let's say, 6 goals for the club, if I can work it out, I'd like to have each committee own one of the 6. That's their baby. So if we have a membership goal and we have in the plan, so let me go back to the planning document. If we have in the plan the strategies that we're going to use to accomplish these goals, then I want the membership committee to own that. I want them to think about what the strategies are, the different tactics that we may want to consider. So it kind of gives them not just a reason to exist, but ownership. Because if they don't have ownership, or if some group doesn't have ownership, then it's not as likely that we're going to execute the plan. People have to do the work. So that would be ideal. Sometimes it doesn't work out that perfectly, but if you can get each club committee to have some degree of ownership over elements of this plan, then not only does it give them something to do that's aligned to the plan, but it's more likely that the plan is going to get executed. And we're going to learn what parts of the plan are working and what parts are not that we may need to adjust. Because not everything that we plan is going to work too, right? So I don't know, Yasser, if that answered your question, but I think for me, it makes so much sense to try to align the execution of the plan with club committees.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a divide and conquer approach, right? Assigning portions to different committees.
Right. When I was president the first time, and I would have done it the second time, the circumstances were different, but I told the board the committee chairs who were on the board, I said, when we have our board meetings and you're reporting out on updates, what I didn't want was like a bulleted list of what the committee did. What I wanted was progress towards goals. So it's like, I want to know how the plan is doing. And it kind of forced them to focus on executing our plan, because that's what we use the board meetings for. And it worked to some degree. It kind of shifted their focus, because everyone was used to just, we did these 10 things in August, whatever they were. And I'm like, okay, but doing 10 things doesn't mean that they were successful. So let's really get into the, what was the strategy and the plan? What was being implemented? Can we say that it's working, or do we need to make adjustments? So that was kind of our approach. Any other feedback on Yasser's question? I thought it was a really important question. This is the easy part here. Populating a spreadsheet. And executing the plan also means monitoring, and we'll talk about Rotary Club Central in a minute, but really tracking to see if things are working. And if they're not working, what adjustments do we need to make, right? So plans are fluid. Let me bring up, okay, so this is the Rotary website. And if you haven't been there, here's Rotary Club Central. And I believe that any member of the club can see the goals in Rotary Club Central. And it'll just take a second to bring it up. I think only the president and maybe the secretary can change goals. Oh, I'm sorry. But I think anyone can access it. And we talked about using like the club assemblies to share goal progress with the clubs, with the members. But Rotary Club Central is great. I mean, I remember when they first came up with this, I thought it was wonderful because it's all right here. It's a nice dashboard of everything that the club is doing and membership trends. So I'm going to see my club, and it's going to show membership trends. And you can see up here, it's got different tabs. And here's foundation information, and it's just great. So I think every single member of a club can access the data, and only a few of the officers can make the changes. So very helpful tool. I was really pleased when they came up with this. Very helpful. Okay, this is what I want to show. If you go to Goal Center, you see these different items or different aspects of the club. So members and engagement, Rotary Foundation giving, service projects, all of this. So again, it's just great. I was really happy when they did this. So those two go hand in hand. Decide what you'd like your club to be like in 3 to 5 years, and then decide on the annual goals and enter them into Rotary Club Central. We can't emphasize this enough. 30% of the clubs having goals in Rotary Club Central is not successful. Okay.
If it looks like an earlier comment, these two goals that we have here, we cannot be successful in them if we don't prepare members for future roles to smooth leadership transition. What goes along with that left corner.
Yep.
So that's key to ensure continuity of a plan. And that happens all the time. We have a plan and nothing happens to the plan because every July 1st there's a new leadership and they're new to the role, and there wasn't long-term succession planning where they're exposed to this plan and all its efforts.
Yeah, as I said, they're all linked.
Good point. Yeah,
you can emphasize one of them, but they're all connected.
Yes.
Okay, we've got a few minutes before the end of this breakout. I did want to show you this leadership in action guide. It's really interesting. So this is under the coach new and continuing members in leading. So if you click on this leadership and action guide, it's going to bring up a one-pager. So this is a little confusing. It's a nice brochure, but in and of itself doesn't give you much. What you have to do is click on another one of these. So this is another hyperlink in bold. And this is really like a training program for leaders. And when you click on this and open it, it actually brings up a zip file with 10 modules for leadership training. I mean, I was astounded when I went through this first time. So just to give you an idea, so it's got like an introduction, who should participate, what's it going to look like. So this would be great if your club has a club trainer or someone who kind of would lead the leadership through this. If not, maybe ask your assistant governor to help. But just to give you an idea, here's like the innovation module. And they're not that lengthy, but boy, I'll tell you, I mean, it's pretty extensive. And if your club leaders go through something like this, or if they take courses in on the Rotary website, I mean, the main thing is to have them be prepared. So again, this is just really awesome that they even went ahead and did this. Has anyone used this by any chance?
First time I see it. Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't for this, I didn't know about any of these materials, maybe one, until this brochure came out with all the links. So maybe one reason why we keep doing these Be a Vibrant Club workshops is to focus on, you know, all these different really excellent resources that Rotary has. So the main thing is just keep the pipeline going. Identify who the new leaders are, prepare them for future roles, and coach them and kind of give them opportunities so that when the leaders step in to serve, they are prepared and equipped and ready to go.
Jeffrey, I think we probably have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Just ahead.
So I'm going to stop sharing. And so again, this is like one block of the 3. Any questions, insights, feedback?
That to me, that this is Bill again, that to me, that very last one is really, really important, that having people in the pipeline and getting them started in the training. It's an issue that our club has faced we've had to select a president really at the last minute before the year started for 2 years in a row. And it's a big reason why I came back 9 years after being president to be president again, was to focus on building that pipeline to help our club get to its 2nd century. This is our 100th anniversary as a club, and I could see us ending at 100 years if we didn't take some serious steps to try to keep the club, make the club more vibrant.
Awesome, Bill. Thank you. Other feedback, questions?
I guess I
Yasser?
should add that the next president and the president after that are already recruited and in place.
That's awesome. That is
The-
awesome.
These are all things that happened, you know, a year before you're in official capacity, maybe as a president. So at least a year or two. So it's not something necessarily when you're already a president, but more on the planning side ahead of it. Bianca has her hand raised. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bianca.
So I want to say congrats to these current president-elects. Bill, I don't know if you can see this, but in our little meeting here, we have 3 club president-elects that are signified as such on this Zoom meeting. So there are 3 clubs that are already working on training the next leaders.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Actually, my president-elect is in the not in our group, but she's in the session today too.
See,
Awesome.
I think that's great.
Yeah. We
So
always
thank
said, you know, pets is great, but pets happens in March.
Yeah.
And if a club knows who its president-elect is back in July, why have July through March be limbo for equipping and preparing those incoming leaders? You know, we've got all that time we should use if we can.
We really try to send our president-elect to pets.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
I tried to do that.
yeah. Okay, so it's 10:40 and the breakout rooms were supposed to end.